It's me, Ingrid, the INFP, and I'm doing a talk about study techniques, or whatever is left of them in my INFP adult brain. This is a reply to a comment that I got on my last video. This person wanted to know if I had any INFP study techniques, which I don't, but I'll just tell you my own experience. This commenter also wanted to know about any specialization ideas for INFPs, but I don't think that I can answer that question because I am not sure about how to answer that question, since I don't know what I'm interested in specializing in myself. So that's why I'm going to focus on study techniques. I am going to start this off with a few disclaimers. Only you know how to study best for you. This is just my general advice. Stuff that worked for me or didn't work for me. Two, I might have an undiagnosed mental illness. I don't know. I think that as an INFP, that's not so uncommon, so maybe it still works for you. And thirdly, this might be different for me. Living in Sweden, studying at Karolinska in Sweden, as opposed to in the United States or in any other country. I grew up in France, and the education system is very much different there than in Sweden. And I know that Anglo-Saxon teaching is a little bit closer to Sweden. In terms of normal schooling, let's say, but medical school in Sweden is different than medical school in the US. That being said, I think that I might have some insights for you, so let's go. Let's see. Number one is study environment. I liked studying in cafes. Some people hate studying in cafes. My best friend, who I was studying with, he was absolutely against studying in a cafe. So pick a study environment that works for you. I liked having the bustle of the world around me in the cafe, which is still kind of like a muted area. I liked having that rather than having the university environment. I found that kind of stifling. Other people can I think that the cafe is way too loud. And my friend, he would have to sit in a quiet room and read with absolutely zero distractions. I liked having a cafe. I would put my headphones on, so that would mute the sounds of the cafe, but I would still have the idea that there were people around me, and that kind of made it more inspiring, you know? So study environment is good and important. I would also like the idea that I would get myself a treat. It got expensive after a while, but I found that the expense was worth it. Because I need to have food in my stomach in order to think. So I would always get a hot chocolate, and the warmth of the hot chocolate is also important. It brings to the whole experience. Romanticized studying, it makes it 10 times get better. So that's it's about study environment. Sometimes I'd play a game with myself, trying to figure out like, if you go to this cafe further away than you would, then that means that you have to study more. And in that way, I got more minutes of reading the material in. Hopefully, like at some point during the 2 hours around that I would stay in the cafe, I would stay there maybe 1 to 3 hours. Hopefully, I'd have like an intense study session for like a half hour out of those 2 hours, or 45 minutes if I was there longer. And I would just like ride a wave. If the inspiration comes, I'll ride a wave and like study. And then at some point I'd get distracted. Hopefully that was the case. The rest of the time I was procrastinating by switching tabs on the computer, which, yeah, I've wasted so many hours on the computer, it's amazing. But when I was at the cafe, I would study the stuff that I had to study on the computer. When I was back home studying, I would try to get as far away from the computer as possible, which I never managed, but I tried in order to like stop procrastinating. I would print out the summaries and go through those if I could. Sometimes I couldn't avoid the computer, and that's fine. Number 2, we're getting to it, is study materials. I would not read the book. My best friend, who the one who likes reading in a quiet room, he likes reading the book. He would buy the book, he would underline the passages, and I don't have the discipline for that. I get distracted when I read. So I would use the summaries that older students made for us. And that's very helpful because they know, they've also had to pass the same tests as you have. So I would recommend if your school has summaries made by other students, mnemonic devices, whatever, find out where they are and get your hands on them, print them out if you have access to a printer at your school or something. And I was highlighting all of these things and reading through them and memorizing them. So that was what my studies materials were. Sometimes I would have to get the book if it was like a course that really follows the book, but most of the time it doesn't. So I wouldn't bother with buying the book unless it was really essential for that class. Ask other students how they do it. So that's about study materials. I would go to my next point, which is studying together with somebody else. So I was studying with my best friend, the guy who likes sitting all alone in a quiet room, underlining passages from the book. So that was a little bit hard to get together. Hopefully you'll find a study group, people who like studying with you and who don't get you too distracted. I must admit I'm the distractor when I'm with a group of people, because my friends are usually nerds. So it kind of works out for me that they keep me online. If I was in a group with just like regular students, I think I'd be the one who would be the nerd and tell everybody to shut up. But that wasn't the case during medical school. I was with my best friend, and he, as you know, will have to study on his own because he couldn't deal with noise. But what we did is that we went through all tests together. So we would study on our own, and then we would study the test together. And studying the test together was really, really good. Everything was more exciting when I was talking it out with him. I think that as an INFP, the T part needs to communicate ideas out loud, and doing it with someone who understands you is great. So I would recommend doing that. Don't let the other person study as they like as well, but you need to get something out of this too. So I think that studying with somebody else is great. Sometimes we couldn't do that because he was in another hospital than me, so sometimes we didn't have the same tests. But I mean, sometimes we were with other people as well, and it's really good to go through all tests. Some people like studying and like reading together. The only problem with that is that I would always distract everybody else, or I would get distracted because it doesn't. Because like if the other person's there, I can't put myself in my own bubble and just read on my own. I could if I put headphones on and like really separated myself from the other person, but I don't think that works best for me. So that was about my opinion on group work, or like a group setting. A fourth point, if we are on number 4, I don't know, is really depends on your school. My school was in Sweden, where you do a lot of group work, where you do a lot of presentations, and I hate doing group work and presentations, but it worked out. I mean, I might have social anxiety, but it's not triggered that much about that as opposed to other things. But in other schools, you'll have different kinds of tests and stuff. The most scary tests are actually the practical tests. The OSCE, I don't know how you say it, OSCE test, like the practical tests. That's the most scary of the entire medical school. And that is not something that you can study yourself to. Basically, you have to test that out. So go to your practice lab or whatever you have over there, and test it out with your friends, preferably with a supervisor around that can show you the stuff. Our school had days for that, where they had that open so that everybody could test out the stuff. And that's the most scary part. I'm the kind of person who could study my whole life and never work, and I'd be super happy. The only problem is that I need to get money, so that doesn't work. But if somebody gave me tons of money, I would go to uni and still. Sorry for the dog barking. I would still go back to uni if I had $1 million. I would go back because I love studying, I love reading, and I love books. So I love sitting in cafes. I like being in school. Some people hate being in school, and that's okay. but that's why I feel like it all depends on how you learn best. So back on track. I studied in a French school system from a pre-kindergarten to basically graduation, and then I went to a Swedish medical school. So the learning styles are very different. Swedish schools are much more creative, and there's a lot of group work, a lot of presentations. So I, as an INFP, doing the creative stuff is much more exciting, but the group work is less exciting. So for me, learning how to learn stuff by heart has never been a problem because I've basically done it my whole life, from like the age of 2. So I know that is difficult for some people. Some Swedes in my class seem to have trouble with getting into the academic learning style, which wasn't a problem for me. But so the question was that the commenter on my previous video posted was about scheduling and how I deal with that, and the answer is badly. I would always have everything by the deadline if there were things to give in. But if there were things to like studying, I would often do it at the last minute. I never pulled an all-nighter, which is great, because I feel like sleep is very important. But I would study till 2 in the morning. So, but after 2, my brain I can't. So I would say no all-nighters if you can. I would say you can't plan your life to be like, oh, between 8:15 and 10:15 I'll be studying. Well, you can't. You have to like say, well, at some point during the morning I will get some half hour of work in, whether it's in a half hour in a row or it's 5 minutes here and there. You have to be nice to yourself, and that's important when you're not thinking or SJ type. You have to accept that your studying won't be like everybody else is studying. Yeah, because I have mental illnesses, I pushed a lot of my energy into studying, which kind of resulted in me brushing off a lot of other sides of life. So I hope that you don't need to do as I did, and that you find some kind of balance in your life. I mean, you're only in school once, medical school once, and I think that you should try and enjoy it while you can. I kind of regret not socializing more and doing more activities outside of school. Because like doing stuff outside of school kind of it does give you more energy for studying afterwards. If you're only thinking about studying all the time, then your brain can't make it. So I hope that you don't take this message like too close to heart and like really try studying really hard all the time, because that's the trap of medical school. You don't have a lot of time, and you want to pass so badly. I hope that you can have a balanced life as well as going to medical school, which is hard, I know, but that is my wish for you, at least. I also wanted to add something about switching between topics during the day. It can be good, like, to not just study cardiology all day. It can be good to like split it up and do some cardiology in the morning and do some I don't know, nephrology at lunch and back to cardiology in the afternoon, just because your brain gets bored. So I think that it's good to alternate between different topics. Sometimes that's not possible because you're only studying one thing at a certain time. Then try to divide it into subcategories so that you're studying like a bit of the seminary and then a little bit of the book and a little bit of the summary, and then you go back and forth so that you don't like get stuck on something, because otherwise it's really easy to procrastinate and to not actually learn what you're reading on the page. So that's my last tip on the subject. Please tell me in the comments if there's something you'd like to know. Happy to help. Okay, bye.